Bear had been floating face down in the lagoon for 6 hours, and the Tholin's survey lead still hadn't figured out he wasn't dead. I knew, because I'd put him there. I knew, because that's what a Newfoundland does when something below is worth listening to. He goes loose, lets his lungs do the work, drops his big head under the surface, and waits. People who don't know the breed see a drowned dog. People who do know better stop talking. Administrator Catherine Vosk did not know better. She stood at the rail of the survey barge in her pressure-sealed coat, gill slits flaring at the throat, and read off the morning's findings like she was reading a grocery list. Reef classified dormant. No biologic activity above threshold. Recommend immediate extraction of the listening equipment and reassignment of the platform. She didn't look at Bear once. Why would she? He was just the contractor's dog. I'd worked under 6 different Tholin's survey leads in 6 years, and every one of them had the same blind spot. They trusted their instruments the way some people trust scripture, completely, and without curiosity about what the instruments couldn't see. 11 days of sensor sweeps had told Vosk the reef shelf was empty rock. 11 days of watching my dog had told me something else entirely, and I'd learned a long time ago which read to trust first. I was the contractor. Petra Lindqvist, civilian hydrophone technician, 6 years under contract to 3 different alien combines, and the only human on this particular lagoon since the Tholin Compact had leased called us drift from whoever leased it to them. Bear came with the job because Bear came with me everywhere, and because water rescue Newfoundlands don't care whose moon they're swimming on. He's been in the water since dawn, I said. I'd hold off on extraction. Vosk's gill slits closed and opened, the Tholin equivalent of a sigh. The animal is resting. We need the platform moved before the tide cycle. He's not resting. I'd been doing this long enough to know the difference between a dog enjoying a swim and a dog working. Bear wasn't paddling. He wasn't surfacing for air on any rhythm I recognized as comfort. He was hanging there, ears below the surface, body slack, and every 40 minutes or so his tail gave one slow sweep, just enough to hold position over the same 6 feet of reef shelf. 6 feet of reef the Tholin instruments had logged as lifeless 11 days running. The first crack in that finding came at hour 2, when the listening buoys, the ones I dropped, the ones I actually trusted, picked up a frequency too low for the Tholin's own sensors to flag as biological. I logged it as ambient. I didn't believe myself. Neither did Bear, who hadn't moved an inch off that shelf since I'd let him in. By hour 3 the Tholin's survey team had stopped pretending not to watch him. 2 junior techs leaned over the barge rail with their handheld scanners, running them across the water like they expected to catch him glowing. A senior xenologist named Oren Fell asked me, not unkindly, whether the animal required medical attention. He's fine, I said. He does this. He has done nothing for 3 hours. That's the point. Fell didn't understand, and I didn't explain it well, because explaining a Newfoundland's working temperament to a species that measures competence in motion is like explaining patience to weather. The Tholin build their authority on activity logs and sensor sweeps. Bear builds his on sitting still until the thing worth knowing decides to show itself. It got worse before it got clearer. At hour 3.5, one of the junior techs, young, anxious about his own performance review more than anything in the water, decided the dog was in distress and went over the rail on a tether to physically retrieve him. I told him not to. Vosk, for reasons I still don't fully credit her for, backed me up and ordered him to hold position. He didn't listen fast enough. He got within 4 feet of Bear before Bear lifted his head, looked at him with the calmest expression I have ever seen on a dog mid-job, and simply swam 4 feet further out of reach. No growl. No snap. Just patient, immovable refusal, the same way he'd refuse a vet who wanted to clip his nails before he was ready. The tech came back up the ladder red-faced and said nothing. Vosk didn't reprimand him in front of me, but I noticed she didn't ask anyone to try again. It showed itself at hour 4. The water over the reef shelf didn't churn. It didn't need to. It just went a half shade darker, the way deep water does when something large passes beneath the light without breaking the surface, and every scanner on the barge lit up at once, not with Bear's signature, but with something easily 4 times his mass, coiled along the reef floor in a fold of rock the Tholin's 11 days of sweeps had somehow logged as empty stone. Vosk's voice went very flat, the way alien voices do right before they stop sounding casual. Get the animal out of the water. He's fine, I said again, because he was. Bear hadn't so much as flinched. His tail gave its slow sweep, same as it had all morning, and his head stayed exactly where it had been for 4 hours, directly over whatever had just decided to stop pretending it wasn't there. That's the part that took the room down to a whisper. Not the size of the thing. The fact that Bear hadn't reacted to it at all. I've watched a lot of animals meet a lot of predators in 6 years of contract work, and there's a tell that never changes across species. The moment a smaller thing recognizes a bigger thing as a threat, it gets loud, or it gets small, or it runs. Bear did none of that. He floated. He breathed. He let his tail give its slow sweep like the 4-ton shape under him was a current he was politely declining to fight. The reef predator, and I never did get a clean read on its shape, only the long dark fold of it sliding once along the rock shelf and going still again, surfaced for exactly as long as it took to draw one breath through whatever it used for lungs, and looked, as far as anyone on that barge could tell, directly up at the dog floating 18 inches above it. Then it went back down. Not far. 40 minutes later it came up again, closer this time, close enough that I saw 2 of the junior techs grab the rail and Fell's gill slits snap shut entirely. Bear's tail gave its slow sweep, same unhurried rhythm it had kept all day, and he didn't so much as turn his head toward it. The thing hung there a long moment, 4 tons of unreadable shape a hand's width from a 90-kilogram dog who hadn't bothered to look at it twice, and then it sank back into the fold of rock and didn't surface again. That second pass is the one that did it. Not the size. Not even the withdrawal. The fact that Bear had let it get closer and still hadn't found anything in it worth reacting to. Vosk's reef dormant classification did not survive the afternoon. Neither, in a smaller way, did her opinion of my dog. It saw him twice, Fell said, very carefully, like he was trying out a sentence he didn't fully believe yet. It saw the animal twice and withdrew both times. He's a water dog, I said. He doesn't bark at things that aren't worth barking at. It is a threshold for apex predator. We have lost 2 drones to it. It withdrew from a domestic animal, twice. He's not domestic, I said, and immediately regretted how flat it came out, because it wasn't an argument, it was just a fact I'd had 6 years to get tired of explaining. He's from Earth. We don't have a word that separates pet from apex the way you'd like us to. He's both. He's always been both. You just usually only see the part that fetches. Bear surfaced fully at the 4-hour 20 mark, shook the water off his ears in that enormous unbothered way Newfoundlands have, and swam a slow lazy loop back to the platform ladder like none of it had happened. He let Fell run a scanner over his coat. He let Vosk, stiff and silent, stand close enough to see the calm in his eyes for herself. He did not growl at her. He never growled at anyone the whole 6 years I'd known him. He just climbed the ladder, shook again, and lay down in the one patch of sun on the deck, chin on his paws, and went to sleep like a dog who had finished a perfectly ordinary day's work. Vosk filed the reclassification herself. Reef shelf, active, threshold for, recommend permanent listening post. She didn't mention the dog in the report. I didn't expect her to. But she came and stood over him before she left the barge that evening, gill slits working slowly, and asked me, quietly, the first quiet thing she'd said all day, whether he'd have done anything at all if the predator had surfaced any closer than it had. No, I said. He'd have kept floating. That's the whole trick. He already knew it wasn't going to get closer than that. How? I don't know how. I just know he's never been wrong about it yet. She looked at him a long time after that, the way you look at an instrument you've just learned reads truer than your own. Then she went back to drafting her corrections, and the junior tech who'd gone over the rail earlier came by quietly to apologize, and I told him not to worry about it, that Bear had forgotten the indignity of it before he'd finished his next lap. I sat down on the warm deck beside my dog after that, and neither of us moved again until the tide turned, and the lagoon went the color it goes at dusk on a moon with two suns, both of them low enough to lie flat and gold across the water like nothing underneath it had ever moved at all.